sat there, he watched child after child run up and then come right back down. He planned to sneak up behind that big oak, push them down, and declare himself to be king of the hill. Everything was working according to plan. For what seemed like hours, Josie, this red-headed, freckled-faced girl, was on top of that hill, pushing every single person down. It didn't matter if they came up in front of her, or beside her, or behind her. She sent them rolling down. People were exhausted. The laughter soon turned into tears and desperation. And then Sammy made his move. He ran up from behind Josie, reached out his arms to push her down, with victory in his eyes, and then Josie turned around, grabbed Sammy, and threw him right down the front of the hill. Sammy got up, he dusted himself off, and he started climbing that hill again. But then the teacher came out and blew the whistle and said, "All right, kids, it's time to line up." Poor Sammy. He wasn't king. He was a loser, just like everybody else. Or at least that's what he thought. The game has had a couple of different names. Sometimes it's called King of the Hill, sometimes it's called King of the Mountain, and depending on where you're playing it at, it has a different set of rules, but the one thing that it has in common, no matter where you go, is whoever is on top is the king. And let's be honest, it's nice to be king. It's good to be on top. Everyone wants to be there. And the problem is that the top is often narrow, and not everyone can be. The question is what if it wasn't a game? What if it was real? What if there were real losers? What if it wasn't a hill or a mountain, but it was life? It was your life. What if instead of deflecting giggly little kids from pushing you down, it was your past? Perhaps it was that all the times that you said, "This time it's going to be different." Or perhaps it was the guilt from every single moment that you broke that promise and failed to keep it. Perhaps it was the shame of seeing all the faces of people that you've let down. Or maybe it's you every time you look at yourself in the mirror. But maybe it's not your past, maybe it's your present. Perhaps it takes everything in you to drive past that bar instead of going inside it and drinking them under the table. Perhaps it takes all strength for you to compose yourself from snatching up that fool at the office who's acting like a knucklehead. Maybe it's not your past or your present. Maybe it's not even the things that are pushing you down. Maybe it's the things that you trip over all the way up. The things that you think were important, the things that you think were valuable, the things that you thought were your most endearing qualities that set you out as special above the rest. And yet it's those things that don't get you to the top, but the things that keep you at the bottom. No matter what, wouldn't it be nice if everything that kept you from being at the top would just leave you alone? Leave you alone at least for once so that you could say, "Ha! I'm king of the hill. I'm on top." Well, in our 1 Corinthians lesson from this morning, Paul helps us out a bit. He helps us out by giving us a new perspective on that hill and what it means to be on top. Friends, go with me here and look at our lesson from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 through 31. This is what God says there. "For example, consider your call, brothers. Not many of you were wise from a human point of view. Not many were powerful, and not many were born with high status. But God chose the foolish things of the world to put to shame those who are wise. God chose the weak things of the world to put to shame the things that are strong. And God chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not to do away with the things that are, so that no one may boast before God. But because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became for us the wisdom from God, namely, our righteousness and our sanctification and redemption. God did this so that just as it is written, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. This is the word of God. Last week, we heard about Corinth a little bit, how it was a blended community comprising of a variety of different cultures, all vying for the capital of a vast trade enterprise. Paul came to this place, and nothing went perfect. But he got things done. He preached the gospel in the synagogues and in the streets so that all people could hear, and some actually believed. This multicultural metropolis formed a congregation. Not a building, but a grouping of people from a variety of walks of life. A group of people that existed in a world filled with extensive idolatry and debauchery. And then Paul did what every other apostle does. He entrusts what he created into the hands of leaders, and then he left. He leaves to go spread that message elsewhere. And where Paul was at was in Ephesus when he writes this letter, and he writes to a congregation whose leader was this young Jew from Egypt named Apollos. And he writes to a group of people that had division running throughout their entire congregation. Division that was all about petty things. Things like age, gender, ethnicity, physical prowess, intellectual faculties, social status, even who they received the faith from and who they preferred to hear about Jesus from. Some of them were even leaving the truth that Paul proclaimed to them in search of signs or in search of persuasive arguments. And Paul redirects their focus by having them consider one thing: your call. He makes them think about who they were before and what they had going for them before versus who they were now and what they had received. In effect, he tells them who you were was nothing. What you had, what you thought was valuable, amounts to zip. Talk about a burn. In this intellectual tit for tat, Paul basically communicates this. He says to them, if you think you're a smarty pants, think again. Because there's always somebody smarter or wiser than you that can run marathons around you. If you think that you're powerful, think again. Because there's always someone stronger, faster, more agile than you will ever be. If you think where you came from and what you possess and what qualities make you you makes you anything, guess again. Because there's always somebody who comes from a better background, from a better family, from a better neighborhood, that has a better job, that's higher on the corporate ladder, and who will always look at you and think that you're nothing. And you will never amount to anything. And if no one thinks that about you, then chances are that's you. And I got news for you. You are nothing. Talk about a shot in the gut from a guy who just came to you not all that long ago and said, you are loved. Well, if I'm not loved by what I have and what I possess and what makes me me, then why am I loved? If you want to talk about somebody who was intolerant and unsympathetic to their situation, it was Paul. Because he didn't care about the divisions that blighted that congregation. to give the baton to the best one. Not to say he didn't care about them or because he didn't love them, but when he looked at these people that he came to share the message of hope with, what he saw was spoiled children. What he saw was foolish, immature people who wanted nothing more than to puff up their chest, beat themselves like Donkey Kong, and declare who was going to be king of the hill. You know, the thing about king of the hill is that there isn't one. There is no king that's on top of the hill. All there is exhausted people trying to work their way up and slide all the way back down. That is until the bell rings, or the whistle blows, or the teacher says, "All right, class, it's time to line up, get in a single file line." That cute little red-headed, freckle-faced girl, she wasn't a winner because she was on top. Nor did she remain on top. Just like she wasn't on top because she was the strongest, or the oldest, or the smartest, or the most focused, or the most determined to be there. Sammy and all the other kids were not losers because they weren't quick enough. They weren't cunning enough, or they didn't have a good enough plan. We often look at that hill and think, that's where I want to be. And like Sammy, we devise every way we could possibly get up there. But the problem about that hill is that it isn't one. It's Everest. And it's not a game. It's life. It's the perfect and best life that God expects us to have and to live. And we try our darndest to get up there. And yet all we do is find ourselves sliding further and further and further down. We put all amounts of effort, devise every plan, come at it from every angle, and yet still, we slide right back down to the bottom. It doesn't matter how hard we try, we'll never make it. Because every step of the way, there's always something that causes us to slip up. It doesn't matter how big or small the mistake, we can't go any further. There are moments where in our weakness we should have said no, and instead we said yes. There are instances of stupidity where we should have went one direction and instead we went the other direction. There were moments in life when we should have looked at ourselves and said, my value is not in this thing or in this quality. Because in the next moment we quickly realized that it doesn't matter what was valuable or what we thought was important or what we clung to so tightly. Because at the end we can't take it with us and it doesn't help us to measure up. And the guy that's at the top is not just some red-haired, freckle-faced girl. It's the fiery devil who wants to shove every failure, every mistake, everything that we think makes us good, right back into our face and say, then why aren't you any better? No wonder we're exhausted and frustrated and just plain wore out. And yet still, despite all that effort, we want to climb that darn thing. We want to try and make it to the top. Maybe it's like we need some rope, and the rope will help us get there. Or maybe we just need a gentle push. Or maybe we need a running start or a handicap. But it doesn't matter. Because we never can reach the top because we can never see the top. And the one who is on the top is the one who always prevents us from getting there. But Jesus, He doesn't blow the whistle. He doesn't ring the bell. He doesn't call us to line up in failure. No, instead, He steps onto the playground. Instead, Jesus runs towards that hill, and He starts climbing, taking every insult and every slap and every failure and every mistake and everything that we once clung to as good, and yet none of it pushes him away. He climbs, he marches, he crawls, inch by inch by inch. And when he makes it to the top, he stares at that bully face to face, that fiery devil who wants nothing more than to push him down. And he does. Not sending Jesus all the way back down to the bottom, but pinning his face to the peak. And yet, despite all that, it's not over. Christ isn't a loser. He's the winner. Because what happens next is truly magnificent. He doesn't declare himself king of the hill. He lowers it. He levels that mountain for you, so that there is no top. It's just you and everyone else as winners. Jesus, who has all knowledge in the world, who is himself the wisdom of God, became a fool, became a laughing stock for the world. He endured every slap, every ounce of spit in the eye, so that you and I could be clean from our failures. He's the most powerful being of all creation. He's the creator who created everything. And yet for you and me, he allowed himself to be bound, beaten, bruised, and bloody. He allowed himself to be chained and led away, to be pierced in his hands and his feet to a cross, simply for the fact of setting you free. The guy had ultimate treasure, the only one who deserved a crown, the only one who could say, I am the king of this hill and every hill, everywhere. And yet for us, he became poor. For us, he became a servant. So that every blessing from that treasure trove of grace could be experienced by all. Friends, the bell hasn't rung yet. The whistle hasn't been blown. But there is a winner. There is a victor who has been called. There is a king who has been called. And that's you. Because our king came into this world. He took that fiery bully and he sent him away screaming. And he looked at you and me and he placed crowns on our heads, not so that we would be kings of a hill, because there isn't one. And not that we would be kings based on our efforts, because they all failed. But kings because of him. Kings because of his work, his effort. Kings whose crowns are gold because his crown was thorns and bloody. You and I don't beat our chest, but we do beat to the drum of our King who leads us. Our King who leveled that mountain for us. The King who looked at all of us, who has vast qualities that the world may think is rubbish, and says, I choose you. Friends, rejoice in that King, because his peace transcends all understanding, and it guards our hearts and our minds. In Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. Please stand, friends.